I don't think I got music playing. Let me get some music playing real quick, and then we could talk about that. Hold up, hold up. Let me see. Get some music rocking right quick. Let me get myself right. 1 second, everybody. 1 second. Headset died. Here we go. Let me turn this down actually. Here we go. And then I'm gonna leave. Oh, that's not good. Let me see. Alright, let's move this over here right quick so people can see. And then I gotta shrink this down just a little bit, just a tad. Over here right quick so people can see. Alright. Yeah, we're in the safe spot. We're in Thunder Bluff. I'm good here. Yeah, we're in the safe spot. We're in Thunder Bluff. I'm good here. I feel like this music's kind of loud. Just a little bit more. Okay. At some point, I gotta change the thumbnail for this because I think it's not just warrior leveling. But anyway, so today I got a message by a buddy of mine who has sent me this from Asmongold's Reddit. There's the legend himself, and there's an anonymous tip out here stating that WoW Classic or WoW Plus will be getting an expansion. And the premise is, what if the Dark Portal didn't open after the end of Vanilla, right? After we defeated Kel'Thuzad. What if we stayed on Azeroth and dealt with whatever was going on there? And apparently, Chris Messon is behind the project. It will reuse assets from Burning Crusade, Wrath, and Cataclysm to maintain the visual aspect of Classic Era. New models will look like the reawakened Phase Hunter mount. So if you remember the promotion they did for TBC, where you got the Phase Hunter early, kind of looked like that, which basically means that the character models, pardon me, the artwork that you're used to seeing isn't a it's not going to be a drastic change, right? It's not going to be a jarring change, which is good, I guess. The new level cap is 70, and you won't get any new continents. However, Hyjal and the Emerald Dream will become the new zones within the Eastern Kingdoms in Kalimdor. The idea is to finish various vanilla quest lines that were lost in time with the arrival of the Burning Crusade. High Elves and Ogres will be the new races respectively for the Alliance and Horde. So Alliance gets the High Elves, Horde gets the Ogres. That's kind of dope, actually. Just like from a lore perspective, because technically speaking, the High Elves were considered part of the Alliance. Like if you follow like the Zolaman kind of lore, High Elves were actually part of the Alliance, and like the reason why he was so mad at both, like he was mad at the Alliance because the High Elves trapped him, took his eye. He was mad at the Horde because when the High Elves became Blood Elves, the Horde kind of just took him in open arms, and he's like, "Yo, bro, like they took my eye. I'm a troll. What you doing?" So he was just mad off rip. But yeah, High Elves go to Alliance, Ogres stay Horde. The first raids here will be against the Scourge. So that one's a little confusing. Only because we kind of deal with like one of these Scourge generals at the end of Vanilla. Like Kel'Thuzad's down, the Four Horsemen are down. Like I'm talking like in the confines of Vanilla Classic. Like KT's dead. The Four Horsemen are dead. All of like the generals, Patrick is down. You know, what's his name? Gothic, the Harvest. Like a lot of the big Scourge captains that you don't see from Northrend are on Kalimdor and Eastern Kingdoms are dead. So I don't know why the first raid tier would be against the Scourge. I'm not mad at it. I'm just saying I would like to see more. Like I would like to see the bosses and stuff like that. And then at the end here it says Cataclysm will happen after Wrath. So Cataclysm Classic is still on track. Then a little message here. You can consider me a LARPer. See you on November 3rd. Basically saying this is gonna be posted at BlizzCon, right? And I got a couple thoughts about this. So first things first, I think this is a great idea. I think for some time now, Classic has been the driving force for Warcraft. I don't think it's a secret. I think Classic has been keeping the lights on more so than retail. People kind of get excited when a new patch drops in retail, or when that's because the mythic raid race is happening, the World First race is happening, Mythic Plus season is happening. But other than that, retail has just kind of been in a weird spot. And previously, you can kind of chalk it up to subpar expansions like Shadowlands and BFA. Even though I know a fair amount of my friends who like Shadowlands, a fair amount of my friends who like BFA. I personally didn't like either of those expansions, and I played through them. I disliked them for different reasons. Well, one reason that kind of combined, but I disliked them for different reasons. But I still didn't think they were better than their predecessors like Legion or Cataclysm, something like that, right? So, or MOP is a great expansion. So that being said, when you have BFA, you have Shadowlands, you have Dragonflight. Now, Dragonflight, from my own personal experience and from what I can kind of gauge from the community, isn't a bad expansion. It's actually pretty decent. It kind of fixed a lot of the things that people kind of harped on with Shadowlands, since that was the immediate preceding expansion. And I played it. I thought it was great. I thought it was a fun raid. The first tier was a very fun raid. I thought the dungeons in the first season of Mythic Plus was pretty great. I thought the talent changes were pretty good. Like the new talent trees, like the talent web, I guess you want to call it. That was pretty good. I thought the class changes were pretty. Overall, I think Dragonflight is a pretty decent expansion. It's just a shame that not a lot of people are playing it because it's not retaining people. Like, you know what I'm saying? So that being said, if you flip it to Wrath Classic, Wrath Classic, I think kind of is the same side of the coin. It's the other side of the same coin, because Wrath Classic, even though I think it's more interesting, especially now that ICC has got announced today, it's still kind of just a raid logger graveyard. You know what I mean? So there's not really much to do right now in Wrath Classic unless you're running GDKPs or you're leveling alts, because they just brought back Joyous Journeys. You're not really doing much in Wrath Classic outside of raid logging, and that's equally boring, right? So on one hand, on retail, you have the content that's really not holding you. On the other hand, on Wrath, you have kind of the same thing, the content that's not holding you long enough to stay on and do other things. And they've tried to make changes. They got Titan Rune dungeons. They have, they've made small changes to classes, so on and so forth. But it's just not enough to retain you, right? So I think it's a good idea expanding or expounding upon, I should say, the vanilla pseudo space. And I don't think it's a coincidence that every couple of years we kind of get a different iteration of vanilla or TBC that becomes popular. I don't think that's a coincidence. Before hardcore really came into fruition, people were really buzzing about Turtle WoW, right? Turtle WoW was the next big thing. I think if hardcore didn't hit as hard as it did, Turtle WoW would have kind of went up here, but hardcore kind of stole its trajectory. But even when TBC came out, even when Wrath came out, people were still playing on vanilla servers. Like, I played on Warmain, on private servers on Warmain before Wrath came out, like while I was still playing TBC. And people were still talking about vanilla private servers. People like the vanilla space. So I think it only behooves Blizzard of capitalizing on that, right? Because it's kind of almost like lightning in a bottle. Here you have a game. Like, imagine this. Imagine you guys, I'll put it on my own way. Imagine Soul, right? In 2023, I release Soul's Candyland. the video game, right? And it's a hit. And for some reason, one reason or another, Hasbro doesn't sue the pants off me for copyright infringement. But anyway, I create Souls Candyland in 2023, and it's a hit. You know, people are buying it, people are having fun. You do what you got to do. Let's say 20 years later, in 2043, Souls Candyland still exists, but obviously it's far removed from what it was 20 years ago, but people are still playing that 2023 iteration. It's kind of what you have in WoW. Here we have a game that came out in 2004 that people are still hearkening back to, that version of that game. And they're doing it repeatedly. They did it with Nostarius. They did it with Turtle WoW. They did it with Vanilla Classic, which was a hit. They did it with TBC. They did it with Rad. They're doing it again with Hardcore. Like, people are returning to the beginnings of the game repeatedly every couple of years. So it only makes sense for Blizzard to try to expound on it. Now, I think there's a fine tune. They got, like, there's a tuning knob that they kind of gotta watch how they turn. Because you turn it in one direction too much one way, you end up with basically just what's happening with Wrath, right? With TBC, Wrath, and soon to be Kata. You're getting closer to the more modernized version of WoW and further away from the OG version of WoW. So you turn it too much in one direction, you go that way. You turn it too much in the other direction, and you kind of stay stagnant, right? You kind of just, like, people already know what they're expecting. You know what I mean? I think that's why it's really difficult to kind of do a Season of Mastery 2, because it's like, all right, how many times in a short time frame, how many times can you raid Molten Core, ZG, Onyxia's Lair, Encourage, and Nax over and over? Like, how many times can you do that? So I think it's tough. It's tough to kind of say, oh, they should just stay the same. But fortunately for Blizzard, a lot of the player community is doing the work for them. The players came up with this hardcore challenge. Blizzard just kind of put their stamp on it and made it official, and now they have the backing on it, so which is great. But yeah, I think going back to my original point, Classic has been keeping the lights on more so than retail, in my opinion. You can, like, if you guys see this, I know this is a stream, but I might clip this part and just make it into a video so people can understand the main points that I'm trying to make without having to sift through the stream. But yeah, I want to clip this part. But anyway, I think Classic has been keeping the lights on. Now, one thing I will say is that it's kind of crazy. This has nothing to do with the expansion. I'm going to step away from that real quick. But it's kind of crazy that here you have, or if this is true, only if this is true. If this is true, you will have, like, 4 iterations of the same game. You'll have Hardcore, you'll have Classic Plus, you'll have Cataclysm Classic, and then you'll have Retail. You'll have 4 iterations of the same game. Kind of crazy. I think that's just amazing, just from a development standpoint, that you have a product that just kind of builds itself. It pays for itself at that point. But anyway, back to this stuff. So going through some of these points. Let's start with, I can't highlight it. Damn. Let's start with the first one. Let's start with the whole idea is, what if the Dark Portal didn't open? I think that's a great idea. I think this, for the lore people, I think it keeps things very grounded for people. I think that it's a lot of things that people kind of didn't like when you get into later expansions of games where, you know, instead of being just a local hero, you become like this big god-slaying champion. And some people like that aesthetic. Some people don't like that. So me personally, I never really cared. I felt like it was only a natural form of progression. If we're killing stronger and stronger enemies as the game progresses and as the years go by, obviously we're going to get more revered for it, right? Like, and honestly, I think that started with Vanilla. We're killing, who did we kill? We stopped Cthulhu, an old god. Like, that's a pretty big feat. We stopped Kel'Thuzad, one of the most powerful liches in existence. Pretty big feat. We stopped Onyxia and Nefarian. Pretty big feat. You know what I mean? Like, these are things that the player base has done that it's kind of hard to stay in that I'm just a local hometown hero bottle. Like, when you're doing monumental things like that. We killed the Fire Lord. Like, that's hard to, it's hard to just compartmentalize that. But anyway, I think keeping it on Azeroth does keep the game as grounded as they can, because it's not like we're traveling across space to go to another planet, because that's essentially what Outland is, just a broken up Draenor. So I think the first part of keeping things on Azeroth keeps things grounded. I think it keeps things grounded, and I think that's a really good idea. The second part, Chris Metzen being the head of the project. I mean, people love Metzen, right? He's been a part of WoW's best moments, and he's been partly a part of some of WoW's worst moments. But I don't hold that against Metzen. I think he is a skilled enough and experienced enough game designer he can look at his previous mistakes and then look at the mistakes that were made after he departed and kind of improve upon them. So yeah, that's a no brainer bringing him back and let him head the project, right? What up if you're new in the stream? Just talking over the leaked quote unquote expansion. I'm gonna clip this part, I'm gonna clip this and make it its own video and put it up on my channel. So if you missed anything, you can check it out back there. But I'm just going through the leak point by point. Going to the third point, we'll reuse assets from BC, Wrath, and Cataclysm to maintain visual aspect. I also think that's great. You don't want to have too much. You don't want to remove what people love about the game. I think there's a large part of the player base who actually like the aesthetics of vanilla TBC and to a lesser degree Wrath. I think Wrath Cata is where you start to see a little bit different models and updated models. So yeah, I think that's fine. It's not going to be a jarring change. They even explain a little bit deeper. New models will look like the reawakened Phase Hunter, which didn't really look too drastically different from the Phase Hunters you saw in Outland, so that's fine. The next point, the level cap is 70. So this was interesting. Believe it or not, I would like the level cap to stay the same. I don't even think it should be a level cap. I think it should be instead of a vertical progression, it should be a horizontal progression. You should be just progressing through the reputations, the gear, the lore, whatever you have. I think that would be a more interesting kind of progression path, because I think honestly though, what this is, the level cap increasing, all that really is time sink. It's just a time sink for players. You want people to play as long as you want player retention. So players having to spend time leveling is just player retention, because no one's going to hit. I mean, some people, a very small percentage of the players will go from 60 to 70 in 1 to 2 sessions. The majority of the player base will not go from 60 to 70 in 1 to 2 sessions. So that's just player retention. Without new continents, which is without new continents, Hydel and Emerald Gene will be active. Also think that's a good change. Again, that's just going back to what people kind of got upset with some of the later expansions in WoW, where they felt like it wasn't grounded. We were space traveling, we were going to Draenor, then we were coming back and going to the new hub area, which kind of eliminates the point of going back to Kalimdor and Eastern Kingdoms. Once Northrend became a thing, do you really spend much time in Kalimdor and Eastern Kingdoms? Not really. Even though Ironforge is the greatest city of all time, you don't really spend too much time in the older hub areas, right? Once a new place happens. When Pandaria came out, you didn't really go back to Northrend, right? When Kotiris and what's the other place? Zandalar came out, you didn't really go back to Pandaria. So it just moves the goalposts. So I like Hydel. Hydel's already in Kalimdor, so I like that part. And then the next part, the idea is to finish various vanilla quest lines that were lost in time. So that one's kind of interesting, because I'm not really a quest guy. I don't really read the quest text. I know some of the more infamous quests, but I don't really know too much about the quest lines that got lost. So that one's a interesting thing. I do know there are some quests that get lost as you progress through the game that you can't get certain items or certain things. So maybe they're trying to expound on that, but I didn't know that there was, some quest lines that people wanted, that they want to finish out. So that's an interesting one. And then next we have the High Elves and the Ogres are the new races. So this one's kind of interesting too, because it's really interesting because it kind of brings up two questions. Question number one: all right, so if Alliance are getting High Elves and Horde are getting Ogres, does that mean this World of Warcraft Awakening is kind of like its own thing from TBC? Pardon me. Because in TBC, the High Elves become the Blood Elves, and Ogres aren't a part of the Horde. If this was the transition from Alliance to TBC, would the High Elves defect, in the Horde just kind of with the Alliance? Would the High Elves defect from the Alliance to the Horde, and would the Ogres defect from the Horde just to be in their own thing again? That's the kind of questions I would raise. But yeah. I think I think that's interesting. I mean, new races are always appealing. I would love to see a mock-up of the racials for the ogres, like right, like or even the high elves. Like even though the high elves would be kind of weird because it's like we have blood elves and we've had blood elves for years. So what fundamentally different would the high elves be from the blood elves? Like what would they have lost to go from high elves to blood elves? That's what I would want to see. The first raid tier being against the Scourge. Like I said, I'm a little confused at that. I would like to see more information on that, only because we kill a lot of the high-ranking Scourge commanders in Naxxramas on in Eastern Kingdoms already, right? Who is alive for us to really fight? Like I said, we like even before Naxxramas, even if you go into places like Skolamance and in Strathome, we stop a lot of the horde heavy, not the horde, a lot of the Scourge heavy hitters. So like Baron Rivendare is gone. Who's the guy in Skolamance? What's his name? Let me see. Dark Master Gandling, he's gone. Who else? Let me check Strathome real quick. And most of these guys are kind of don't matter. It's really just Baron Rivendare, maybe Barthalos. Most of these guys really don't matter. They're just people who turned. But yeah, Dark Master Gandling's gone. Alexei Barov is gone. The Lady Alucia Barov is gone. Krastenov is gone. Then if you look at Nax, right? Let me just jump onto Nax right quick. We can move this back over here. Look at all the heavy hitters we stopped. Like KT is obviously one. Patchwork, the quote unquote Avatar of War, is another. The Four Horsemen, four Scourge generals gone. Hagen gone. Noth gone. Like all these guys are gone. So it's like, I wonder who would we be fighting in this Scourge raid here. That would be an interesting thing to see. And then the last point of Cataclysm will happen after Wrath. I mean, I think that's a no-brainer. I would love to see how these two things will coexist, to be quite honest with you. That's really like a big thing. That's really what I would want to see. How do you allow Cataclysm Classic and the Awakening to coexist? Because people kind of already know what they're getting with Cataclysm. We really don't know what we're getting with this Awakening thing. So I feel like if anything, Awakening would really, really cannibalize Cataclysm. That's what I feel like. And that's not really what you want. Now, Blizzard has done a really good job at allowing the multitude of their games to coexist, right? Retail, classic, and hardcore. Or retail, Wrath, we'll call it. Wrath and hardcore all pretty much coexist simultaneously in their own ego space, right? I don't think one really takes away from the other. But I feel like Awakening and Cataclysm Classic would kind of be too close, where one would feed off the other. And I think in this case, Awakening would be the big dog. Yeah, that's what I would say. So someone said too much work for Blizzard. $49.99, a little low for Blizzard. Maybe $90. He's balling. $90? No, you're bugging out. I think $50 honestly is not a bad price. Honestly, keep it a beanstack with you. $50 for a classic expansion? I don't know. But, I mean, if it has to be $50, I wouldn't mind it. Like, honestly, that's not a bad price, right? $49.99 for the standard issue. If you want game time, you actually have to play the game you paid for the $100 edition. Wow. I love this, but it's probably bullshit. Agreed. I honestly think the healthiest thing to do. Let's talk about that real quick. Is this bullshit or not? Because I went through this whole list and I didn't even expound on the fact of, is this real? Could this possibly be real? And to be quite honest, I feel like there's a fair chance. I feel like if we're talking about like a 100% split on how much I think this is real, there's like a 40% chance of this being real and a 60% chance of this being not. I don't know this person. Obviously, this is anonymous. It's anonymous, so no one knows who did this, who made all these bullet marks. But I think number one, why I think it's 40% real is, and 60% fake is, number one, we've had no communication when it comes to what's happening with either a Season of Mastery 2, what's happening with Classic Era, nothing, right? This hardcore thing is cool, but I feel like it's on a time frame. It's on its own lifeline, right? Unless they like expand it to other expansions, right? Where you do like a Burning Crusade hardcore, or a Wrath hardcore, which would kind of be interesting. I feel like the further you get down the line with expansions, the less likely you are to get hardcore iterations of those expansions because, pardon me, a lot of those expansions kind of added things where death is basically imminent, especially in raiding. Like there are certain raid mechanics where you really can't avoid. You're going to die. You're going to die. Like I'll give you an example. I can't change it. No, but anyway, I'll give you an example like Terran Gorfine. Like Terran Gorfine in Burning Crusade. Like his mechanic is he turns you into a ghost, and then you die at the end. So do you just make sure when you go do that fight, you just have a couple of people like you be ready? You can't even have a couple of people sacrifice themselves because you don't know who's going to get picked. So at any given point, you could just be picked to die. Like they would have to either change Terran Gorfine or they would have to just allow the opening of Illidan's door from Rip, right? And just say, go as you please. So things like that. Like that's why I feel like, and that's just one example. I'm sure there's more that I'm not thinking about in TBC and in Wrath and in Kata, but I think the further you get away from vanilla, the more difficult it is to really do hardcore and those things. Even though I would do a TBC hardcore, I'm not going to even lie to you. I would do a TBC hardcore. I just think that some of the mechanics would definitely have to be tweaked because you just couldn't do it without a guaranteed death. And Terran Gorfine, I think, is probably like the one. It was the first thing that came to mind. Like that was the one that's like, how do I avoid this? How do I avoid it turning into a ghost? He's gonna randomly pick somebody. So how do I avoid this? So yeah, I think while it would be great, I don't know how and I feel like that's really a hardcore issue. It kind of puts an immediate goal line on Classic. Now, granted, deaths are gonna happen every day. So a guild progressing could die and have to start all over, and it kind of just recycles itself. So I will say that hardcore does have a really good recycle rate. It recycles its content pretty easily. But yeah, I went on a tangent. Now I forgot where I was at. Anyway, back to this. We'll figure that out later. But oh yeah, the why I think it's real or not. But yeah, we haven't heard any communication. We haven't heard any communication about anything preceding, or anything following up the end of Season of Mastery, right? So that's number one. That goes into the box of, I think I'll put it in both boxes. It could be real, it could be fake, because one, we just haven't heard anything. Everything is speculation, right? When you leave people to assume things, you get wild summations. So I'll put it in both boxes. Reason why I think it could be real is because it just makes a lot of sense when you read this. Like everything that was stated here just makes a lot of sense. The price tag, the premise. What if we didn't open the Dark Portal? That sounds like a Metzen idea. Reusing assets from BC and Wrath and Kata, things that they have access to already, increasing the level cap to 70, things we've seen already, right? Hyjal and Emerald Dream opening. That, like, let me see, is Hyjal even on the map? Let me just double check. Yeah, this space right here, that's Hyjal. And to my knowledge, you can't get there. Like, you can go to Winter Spring, but you can't get to Hyjal. So it just makes sense. Like, it's a spot where players don't have access to that would just open up with the new expansion. Makes sense to me. The Horde and the Horde and Alliance getting high elves and ogres, that one kind of puts me on the fence of this could be fake, because people have been talking about ogres being playable for years now, and we haven't gotten an ogre. Like, we haven't even gotten an inkling that ogres could be a race. And now we live in a world where allied races are a thing. You can literally add a new race to in a patch. Like, you don't even have to wait for a full blown expansion. And they still haven't added ogres to as a playable race. So that's what it's like. Nagas, like I don't think Nagas are ever going to be a playable race. Like, I'm on the fence. So when I see ogres, I think, I don't know, bro. I don't know. So yeah, that the races, I think, puts it in the box of this could be fake. The level cap, that could be real. The Hyjal and Emerald Dream could be real because we haven't gone there. Cataclysm Classic will happen after Wrath. I think Cataclysm Classic and this Awakening game would be too close, and like it'd be in the same lane. It'd be too close in the same lane for them to coexist evenly. I definitely feel like if they release this and then on top of it release Cataclysm Classic, I feel like people are just gonna migrate to Awakening. That's what I think. I think they let this breathe and then do something else with Cataclysm Classic. Unless they do something like where they say, okay, the Awakening is going to be a short expansion. It's only going to have 2 raid tiers. Or 1 raid tier, right? Something like that, where it's super short. You know what you're getting from beginning to end. And then you can proceed to do Cataclysm, right? I think it has to be different enough to where people can either play both or do one and then jump in ahead and do the other. That's what I think. And if they keep it on the same level as Wrath and Cataclysm, I think this definitely cannibalizes off of Wrath and Cataclysm for a fact. And I think the last thing, and it's not on here, I probably can close this down. I think the last thing I would want to know, and which kind of puts me in the mindset of this could be fake, is they mentioned the raid tier, but they didn't mention like any changes to the size of the raids. And I don't think that Blizzard will go into a Classic Plus expansion and keep 40-man raiding. I was thinking about this earlier before I started streaming. I don't think they do that, to be honest with you. Because look what happened from vanilla to TBC. You had 40-man raids. You had Molten Core, Onyxia, AQ40, Blackwing Lair, and Nax. 5 40-man raids, right? And you had ZG and AQ20 as the 2 20-mans, right? And then TBC comes out and they eliminate it. So the first expansion, they just eliminate 40-man raiding. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think Blizzard knew from early on, back in 2000, when did TBC come out? 2007, 2006? I think they knew from RIP that it's just a lot more difficult to, especially as, time goes on, technology improves, the economy changes, people get older, your player base gets older, all of these factors that it's just hard to get 40 people to adhere to a schedule. Hell, it's hard to get 25 people to adhere to a schedule. It's hard to get, if you're looking at retail, it's hard to get 20 people to adhere to a schedule, right? So I think that's why people really want 10-man to come back. It's just easier to get 10. It's easier not only to get 10 people to adhere to a schedule, but it's easier to pug if you need, like, all you need is 5 friends. You can just pug 5 other people, call it a day. It's an intimate setting. Y'all can all jump in Discord. It's not overly, saturated with people. Y'all can get rocking. So the fact that they didn't mention the raid sizes, I doubt Blizzard would not do a raid change. I doubt they would keep 40-man raiding. That's just how I feel about that. I doubt they would keep 40-man raiding. And if they did, not to say that it's impossible to do, obviously in 2019 Vanilla Classic, people wouldn't jump right back into that ship. They sailed ahead. They did not care about the 40-mans. They were jumping. But I'm pretty sure people were pugging. I'm pretty sure, I'm sure there's a small percentage of guilds who had the same consistent 40 people every week during their raid schedule. But I'm pretty sure I would want to say this is a 60-40 split. I would say maybe even a 70-30. 70% of guilds did not have the same 40 people show up every week. Maybe 70s even sounds like a lot. Maybe 75% did not have the same people show up every week. So that kind of makes me feel like this might be fake, because I doubt Blizzard keeps 40-man. I just don't see it. I don't see it. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Listen, I wish I could have did 40-man rating the proper way, right? I've done it here and not even here and there. I pugged Molten Core officially during the TBC pre-patch when I was leveling a Paladin. I did that. That was pretty cool. I did the Molten Core event on retail when they brought it back for the anniversary. I did the South Shore and Terra Mill stuff, but that's not real 40-man rating. That's not planning to have 40 people consistently week to week, right? So I've done that, but it's just a lot. I would as much as I don't want to do that. As much as I would want to experience 40-man rating, like in my current guild, not on hardcore, but on Wrath, I would not be no officer in a 40-man guild. No way. You can miss me with that. And I think a lot of people have that same sentiment. Like being an officer or being a leadership as part of a 40-man team is just a lot of thankless work. It's a lot. If you don't believe me, try it. If you don't believe me, go do it yourself. Go level a tune up in Classic Era, because people still playing, and get into a 40-man guild and try to be an officer. And you will not want to do that. promise you. So that's what kind of makes me feel like, this might not be the real of it. So I think that's all I really wanted to say about the stream. I'm gonna do a little leveling here. I do want to say one thing. So my last stream that I did, I definitely died. I was level 37, and I found myself making a very terrible mistake in Stranglethorn Vale, and I died. And now I'm back on it, and I was really sad. I just immediately cut the stream. It wasn't a good time. It was not a good time. I had to think about my life decisions and had to think about if I wanted to do this anymore. And I was like, you know what? Can't even think about it. Just got to jump back on that horse and ride. That's just what you got to do. Can't cry over spilled milk. It happened. There's no going back. There's no appealing. It is what it is. So I ended up just jumping right back into the warrior game because I thought, I'm going to get on my druid. My druid is like level 16. So it would be easy to just kind of jump on the druid and just start at a better jump off point. But I was like, no, the warrior is the hardest class. The warrior is what I've watched the most content on. I need to level a warrior. So let's do it. But that's really it for the stream. I just want to talk about the expansion. I'm probably gonna retitle this because I didn't do any leveling. I really just talked about the expansion. So I'm gonna do that. I'm probably gonna clip some parts and put the smaller videos up on my channel. If you joined the stream and you heard me talk, thank you for joining. If you catch this on the run back, I appreciate you. As always, guys, you know what it is. You've been great. I've been Soul, and I'm out. Peace.